How much of the Falcons 2024 shortcomings are on the players, and how much is on the GM?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money by using code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So if you do not know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. the iron that sharpens the iron, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for almost 2 decades, formerly at falcfans.com, RIP, still going strong on this Locked On Falcons podcast, where we're coming up on 9 years as your daily podcast host. And I appreciate each and every one of you that goes strong with me as an everydayer. That means you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out this show each and every day as your first listen. So today we are joined here by Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And yes, guys, we are going to talk about Kirk Cousins, I know, but we are also going to talk about Tristan Wirfs and the injury and where were Jarvis's whereabouts when Tristan Wirfs went down. And we're going to see if Jarvis has a good alibi for that. Maybe later in today's episode, we'll also talk about, players and how much, getting players' perspective with this Netflix documentary. But we'll start off talking about, this is going to be our last conversation talking about Kirk Cousins and what went down in 2024. But before we get into that, Jarvis, we talked about the Kirk Cousins and the Netflix doc quarterback series that dropped on Tuesday. Jarvis, I know you haven't finished the documentary. You watched the first couple of episodes, but, so far, what are your overall thoughts on this quarterback documentary series before we dive into the whole Kirk Cousins of it all?
I think overall it's really cool to see because, even though it already has happened, we understand we went through the whole Kirk Cousins saga, but it's still kind of cool to see like the backstory of it, like when he was riding home after that Saints game and he left the voice memo to Raheem Morris. I was like, oh my gosh, that is honesty, like brutal honesty. Like, and as a coach, I know you can appreciate that because he's always trying to figure out ways to get better. And I think people don't understand like the mindset or the brain and how an NFL player, how it like really, really works, and just from a football player, I was not playing on that level, but just from a football player standpoint, you always the good ones, that is, they always trying to figure out a way to get better. And even in that moment, right after that game, he was just like, man, hey, coach, I know I got to do this. This is what did not play. I did not play well. I don't want to continue to play this way. I feel like we got to figure out a way for me to get better. Like, I absolutely love that. And I know people want to vilify, as Falcons fans, they want to vilify Kirk Cousins and say he the reason. Thought you made a great point on Atlanta Football Party earlier this week about, blaming Kirk Cousins for this Falcons season tanking. I don't think you should blame him. I think, like you said, it's the money aspect of it too. And I think a part of the blame needs to go to Raheem Morris because he let it go on for so long. I mean, if I'm having a conversation with Terry and I'm Raheem Morris, I would have been like, hey, man, I know we paid this dude all this bread and he say he's good, but something ain't right because he's not playing well. And we have the right to make the decision to say, you're not playing well, sir. And that's why we're about to get ready to sit you down because something isn't quite right. If you say you're healthy, that means you stink. So we need to make a decision accordingly. So, yeah, I think just from a standpoint of just looking at the doc and seeing the honesty and kind of helping me like get a little bit of a different perspective, right? Because like you see the behind the scenes aspect of it. So it's kind of interesting to be able to relive that moment because like you said, we were on that we were living this bad boy, so, but to see another aspect of it kind of gives you a little bit of different perspective.
Yeah. It's always nice to me to get the player's perspective, not only from Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, and Joe Burrow, their perspective on it, and whether you agree with it or not. Again, I think you nailed it, Jarvis, where, obviously last year was a big disappointment. People had a lot of expectations. And I think because of that, you got to point the finger at someone or something. And Kirk Cousins becomes the easy scapegoat with, he was playing reasonably well with the Falcons getting off to that 6-3 start. And then, probably not coincidentally, he suffers that injury in the Saints game and stops playing well. And their season tanks. And it's like, it's Kirk. He's the problem. And it's just like, Kirk did not live up to his end of the bargain. He did not live up to the contract. But like, Kirk never held a gun to anybody's head and said, you got to pay me all this money. Like, this was all, again, the Falcons made a choice. And you talked about it, Jarvis. We debated this in early December, where it was like, you were like, let's pull the plug on Kirk. And I'm like, hey, Jarvis, you gotta give him more time. And a big part of that was like, they made this massive investment. They didn't want to waste that money. And so like, that's really, if you want to say that, the season boiled down to Raheem not pulling the plug, 2 weeks earlier or whatever, that could have potentially saved their season. Kirk Cousins is not the reason why, they had 100 million reasons to stick with Kirk Cousins. And again, while Kirk Cousins is the recipient of those $100 million or whatever, but like, he never forced this team's hand when it comes to that. And, I want to talk a little bit more about that with sort of how we talk about players and whatnot as we continue today's Locked On Falcons, because, it's unrelated to Kirk Cousins. We'll circle back to Kirk and talk about him being what he's going to do for 2025 as opposed to what happened in 2024. But I do want to talk a little bit about sort of, how we talk about players when it comes to like pointing the fingers at them for things that they don't necessarily really control. And, that will allow us, Jarvis, to talk a little bit about your boy, Ruka Roro. And I want to get into all of that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Now, have you ever wished managing your money felt a little easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending it all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Locked On has been very good to me these past few years, and I'm in the best spot financially that I've been in a long time, but I want to stay in a good place by managing my spending better, saving money and building budgets and sticking to them. And Monarch Money is another tool that's going to help me reach my financial goals, and you can reach yours and take control of your finances with Monarch Money by using code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com, and you'll get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. So Jarvis, we're talking about like the player's perspective and whatnot, and I think it's understandable because when you're a fan of a football team, you have this loyalty to the team, and players come and go, and you're like, I care, I bleed black and red, and whoever, right? And Jarvis, I'm not going to make you make this promise, but like, you were not happy, but I don't know if this is fair to say. But when the Falcons traded up for Ruka Roro, there was another player on the draft board that you were like, I'm a big fan of this guy, right? Yep. And Braden Fisk.
Braden Fisk, yep. You can say it. You can say his name. It's okay.
Yeah. And so the Falcons are going to play the Rams later this season. I think week 17 or something like that, right? And I don't want to force you to make a promise, Jarvis, but part of me wonders if we get to that week 17 game and Braden Fisk is having a Pro Bowl season, while Ruka Roro is just having a kind of a Monday, Braden Fisk has like 8 sacks and 50 pressures or whatever in the midst of a Pro Bowl season, which I think we both agree is very, very possible given his capabilities. And then Rook is just having sort of a ho-hum, like 1 or 2 sack, 20, 25 pressure type season, and like, it'll be very easy for people to be like, to blame Ruka Roro for the fact that he's not Braden Fisk. But like, again, like Ruka Roro never told Terry Fontenot to trade up for me, And so like, I bring all that up because I feel like so often when it comes to how fans engage with players, and this, is related to the whole Kirk Cousins of sort of him being the scapegoat, where it's just like, it's not Rook's fault that he's not as good
Right.
as Braden Fisk. And
Yeah.
so, like, to me, when you're trying to point these fingers at these people, like, it's not the players' fault. It's the same thing with Kyle Pitts, right? Like, you know, I'm watching this quarterback doc and I'm watching Jamar Chase do Jamar Chase things, and people are like, man, if only we had drafted Jamar Chase. But like, Kyle Pitts wasn't like, hey, if you don't draft me over Jamar Chase, I'm going to murder everybody in this building. Like, you know, it's not like things like that. You know what I'm saying, Jarvis? So I'm just very curious when it comes to things like that. Like, how do you engage with those elements when it comes to people wanting to sort of pin the blame on the players when, you know, it's you know, the team's the problem. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the history of it, right? Like, because like I've always talked about, like, talking about covering like all the professional sports teams in Atlanta. I always talk about the benefit of the doubt when it comes to general manager, because at the end of the day, I mean, I know coaches are important, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to team building and constructing teams and having success, like, it falls on the general manager, right? Like, the person who is in charge of bringing in the groceries, right, so to speak, if I can use a Bill Parcells term. So I tend to look at whether or not I give the evaluator the benefit of the doubt. And right now, I still don't give it to Terry Fontenot. You know, like, I think that this Michael Penix move, if it works out for him, if Michael Penix works out, which is I believe it will, you know, it's going to cover up some things. Kind of almost like Thomas Dimitrov, right? Because he got Matt Ryan right. Oh gosh, it was a lot of questions. Not a lot. It was some people questioning that, right? I know I was one of those people. You know, I was like, man, get Glenn Dorsey. Woo, hey, boy, that boy gonna tear it up in the league. Then he gets drafted into a situation and plays at a 3-4 and plays a defensive end. That ain't his fault. He was a doggone hell of a doggone 3 technique in college and was tearing that junk up. And Kansas City decided to put him in a different system. So I can't blame Glenn Dorsey. I blame Kansas City because they were trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. So I feel like, you know, this whole Ruka situation, like, you can't look at him, you can't blame him. Sure, you want him to come in and be productive. Absolutely, no doubt. It's your team, it's your squad. But when it comes, if this dude doesn't show more flashes or show more consistency in saying, hey, man, I'm here. I'm a second round pick. I may have been drafted a little bit too high, but I'm still a second round talent, starter, worthy player in the NFL. You got to look at Terry and how he evaluates D tackles. I throw Brandon Dorless in that conversation. I mean, obviously not as to that high of a level of accountability because of, you know, just from a draft position standpoint. But like, you throw in those guys and you draft guys that have no way of getting on the field. I question that because it's like, are they really that good? Now, I'm not saying they should unseat Grady Jarrett or unseat David Onyemata because we talked about earlier, the money. The money was invested in those guys. But, oh, my gosh, if you're drafting those guys that high, there should be, at some point, it should be a decision that has to be made. Like, hey, man, I know Grady has done this for us. I know David Onyemata has done this for us. But, oh, my gosh, we cannot keep this dude off the field that we drafted in the second round, that we traded up for. You know, like, that man, it was almost like he was an easy scratch. You know what I'm saying? Coach's decision early on in the year. It's like, should it be that way when you're talking about a second round pick? Even Grady drafted in the 5th round. They were like, man, shoot, this number 97, man, we got to get him on the field some way, somehow. And he worked his way on the field and became a starter. But he was a 5th round pick. I'm not saying Rook should have been a 5th round pick, but in that first year, it has to be something. We saw it with Braden Fisk and Jared Verse. Both of those cats. Oh, like, he didn't get that many sacks. Well, yeah, he got defense rookie of the year, though. Mm-hmm. You know, Braden Fisk, oh, yeah, I don't care about it. He got multiple sacks. I think about 6, 7 sacks in his rookie year. It has to be something. Something has to pop in that first year. And for you to have that many guys basically like, oh, we know he not playing dressing out this week. What? Like, come on, entire draft class?
Yeah.
Yeah, that says there's a problem, and it's not the player. I feel like it's the evaluator.
Yeah, and you know, when we're looking at, and we'll see what Rook does, but it's like, it's not to sit here and be like, oh, like, you know, you're not allowed to criticize Rook if he's not performing on the field. Like, we're going to talk about that, you know, on a weekly basis. Like, what is Rook doing, and is Rook stepping up, and is he doing what we're expecting him to do? So it's not to be like, oh, you're not allowed to criticize the players, but it is one of those things where it's like, when you're looking at those situations where it's like, the player can only control what they control. And I think that's the beautiful thing about watching this documentary, where, again, it's easy to watch it and go through the emotions, again, of the ups and downs of the NFL season. But like, I think that's what the value of these things are, to be like, hey, this is my perspective. And, you know, particularly at the quarterback position, where, you know, this is the hardest position in sports. And it's like, it's a hard job. And, you know, going back to Kirk Cousins, it's like, you know, the Falcons signed up for 2 years of Kirk Cousins because they had to, right? He's coming off an Achilles injury. You're not getting the best version of Kirk Cousins in 2024. You're probably going to get a better version of Kirk Cousins in 2025. And so that gets us to, you know, moving away from Kirk in 2024. Let's talk about Kirk being the best backup quarterback in the NFL. And Jarvis, if you do wind up finishing the series, that will be a big part towards the end of the episode with Kirk and how he handled his benching. And obviously it's a documentary and they edited it. And so they, you know, if Kirk went on a tirade, like, they probably edited out of that. But like, knowing who Kirk was, like, you know, like, he handled it about as well as possible. And so I think, you know, the hope is that Michael Penix is healthy and balls out this year. So we don't get to see Kirk Cousins, and, you know, we'll assume for now we're not going to see Kirk Cousins once we get into the season. So Kirk's contributions to his football team are really going to be in August. And I'm curious, as we approach training camp, what are some of the things, the value, you know, trying to put a positive spin on this whole debacle, if you want to call it the saga or whatever. What is some of the things that you think Kirk can bring to the table as potentially the best backup quarterback for this team in 2025?
I think it's being an ear for Michael Penix, and whatever that looks like, right? If it's in practice, if it's on the sideline seeing something. And I think Kirk laid it out. This is why it's so hard not to like Kirk Cousins, right? Because I think he laid it out perfectly when I was out there at at mini camp. And he said it. He was like, I don't want to be another voice for Michael Penix. I just want to be a resource, essentially. You know what I'm saying? Of course, it's verbatim, but yeah, I think that's the main thing for him. If he could just be a resource for Michael Penix, like, whatever he needs, just from a standpoint, okay, if you're seeing something, like, or if he throws a pick in practice, and Kirk might say, hey man, this guy was open, or a lot of times, here's what I've done in this particular situation, because I've thrown a turnover in this particular situation, but here's something you might need to look at. Like, when we talked about it on the football party, maybe it's a check down to the running back, to Bijan Robinson or Tyler Algier, who's ever in the game. So I think those are some of the things. Just, it's all about perspective, man, because everybody thinks they know football and all that stuff. And I even went on a little semi-rant about people, stat nerds and all that stuff, and analytics and all that stuff. But it's a different perspective, right? Like, I don't think any of it should be, here's the gospel, here's the truth, because there's so many different ways you can look at it, at football, because it's so detailed, it's so in depth. And I just wholeheartedly believe that there is an advantage to having the guy that's in your corner, and he has his eyes on certain things, because he's going to be looking at things totally different than I am. And if he can give Michael Penix just a little nugget about this play or that turnover or that particular situation in the red zone, I feel like that's going to do nothing but bring his value up to this team as far as what he contributes, and his next team as well. Because teams, if something were to happen and team starts calling, they're going to ask, hey man, how's he been? And behind closed doors, the NFL is cutthroat. Head coaches might say something in public, but oh my gosh, they're gonna tell you the truth, especially if that person making that phone call on the other end is one of their boys, because we know these guys are connected, whether it be scouts, coaches, coaching trees, all these guys are connected in some way, some form or fashion. So I feel like being a resource for Michael Penix is the best possible thing for both parties.
Yeah. I blinked on what it was. Oh, I was thinking back to earlier this summer when all the stuff came out about like Caleb Williams and the Bears, right? And how he just kind of got thrown to the wolves right there. Like we went into last offseason and be like, man, this is the greatest supporting cast that a rookie quarterback's ever walked into when you looked at all the weapons that he sort of had and the potential offensive line. And then you come to find out that the coaching staff didn't really know what they were doing when it came to that. And so I think that's one of the things that it wasn't the perfect way, the ideal way how we got here in terms of Kirk Cousins and the Michael Penix situation, but having that sort of veteran presence so that a guy that's been in this league that does it the right, all the reasons that Raheem Morris and company say why they brought in Kirk, because of the person that he is and what that value that he adds, it's going to give Michael Penix a better opportunity to get off to a better start in his NFL career than you see with some of these other quarterbacks that are just kind of dropped into a situation like, oh, figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I think the other element that this team will benefit from having Kirk as their backup quarterback this year, and Will McFadden of AtlantaFalcons.com pointed this out when he was on the podcast after the draft, was, Kirk gets to practice against some of these young players. They get to go not only against Michael Penix in practice in these team drills, but they also get to go up against two starting caliber quarterbacks. And that's only going to help, particularly some of these younger players, as we're hoping to see these young guys get ready for week one, hopefully get off to a better start. So again, the Falcons' way of doing this, it may not be the most perfect way of doing it, but there are the side effects may wind up being positive. But speaking on getting these guys ready for week one, there's one player that probably is not going to be ready for week one. That is none other than Bucs offensive tackle Tristan Wirfs. You guys heard my perspective on how this is potentially going to impact that week one matchup on yesterday's episode, but we got to get Jarvis Davis's perspective on this, and we got to figure out, did Jarvis have anything to do with Tristan Wirfs' injury, and see what alibi he has as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So for those people that missed the news yesterday, Bucs left tackle Tristan Wirfs, arguably the best offensive tackle in the NFL, is potentially out for week one. We'll see what his situation is, but he recently had knee surgery to clean up an issue that he was dealing with last year. And presumably the expectation by most accounts is that he may miss potentially the first month of the season. And obviously that's going to impact the week one matchup between the Falcons and Bucs. And Jarvis, you've been talking a lot of stuff about the Falcons' ability to get Baker Mayfield on the ground in week one with this revamped pass rush. And, I know the everydayers noticed, Jarvis, that you weren't here last week. And of course, it's the holiday weekend. But to me, it's an interesting coincidence that, less than a week after you're not here, Tristan Wirfs is having this knee surgery. So Jarvis, I'm curious, did you do something here? Like, do you have an alibi for, what, were you in the Tampa Bay area? Where were you this time last Friday?
To my recollection, I believe I was outside my neighborhood pool, sitting, having a conversation with my brother who was there, and my sister-in-law was there.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was there. My daughters were there. So, I have plenty of alibis,
okay,
that can speak for my location,
mm-hmm.
When Tristan Wirfs, had a unfortunate a revelation that he has to have arthroscopic surgery. and he may miss week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay.
But oh my gosh, when I came across this news, when I was by my pool,
you're
with
like,
all
oh
my
no.
family.
Oh no, Tristan Wirfs. Did you hear the news? Tristan Wirfs.
Oh my gosh.
As you
I
hide
am so
the
sad right now.
Harding crowbar behind you, like, oh no, what happened here?
Right. So the former player in me was like, golly, man, I want to see what James Pierce had against dude. I want to see what Jalen Walker could do against Tristan Wirfs. But the doggone fan / person that covers this team who's been thirsting for a pass rush for the past 15 years, that number keeps going up, by the way. It was 10, now it's 15. but no, man. But seriously though, dog, like, oh man, I'm excited. Like, hey man, look, I feel like I'm you. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm taking a piece of your Falcons profit, title. You predicted Bijan Robinson was going to be here. You know what I'm saying? I said I want to see Baker Mayfield on the ground consistently. This is a part of that. This is a part of the matrix. And if for some strange reason Baker Mayfield isn't able to start game 1, like, I think this is going to come to pass, man. Like, this is about to go down. Like, I'm getting excited, man. I'm really getting excited because I know Leonard Floyd can beat the backup tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know that. But oh my gosh, when you got Jalen Walker, man, Leonard Floyd, James Pierce Jr., I throw him in there. You know what I'm saying? I throw him in there. Like, he don't have to be one of those guys where I got to see it. But oh my gosh, when Tristan Wirfs is gonna be out for week 1, man, let's keep this streak going, baby. 2-0. Hey, 2-0. You know what I'm saying? 2024, they were undefeated against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's go. Continue that bad boy, man. 3-0. Let's get it. I'm ready. See, I'm a little amped up, man. You got me excited, dog. Like, Tristan Wirfs out. Oh, man, go ahead and get your rest, bro. You know what I'm saying? Get your rest, dog.
That's what I say. Tristan, we
take that investment.
We want you to come back. Just take your time. Take your time. Take as many weeks as you need. I broke this down. Like, you look at some of these pass rushes that the Bucs have to play the first 2 months of the season against Houston and Philadelphia, Nick Bosa, Aiden Hutchinson. It's like, Tristan, make sure you are 130% before you come back against any of those plays. Like,
take care of your players, Todd.
Yeah.
Take care of your players.
And so we wish you a recovery. We just don't wish you a speedy one. That's all it is, So do whatever it is you need to do so that, you get back to being what you are, but take your time. Take your time. That's all I'll say. So I think this is a great opportunity because we've been talking about it for a while, 15 years. you got to get the opposing quarterback on the ground, and we watched. Talk about Kirk Cousins. Like, Kirk Cousins balled in both of those games against the Bucs, but Baker Mayfield also balled in both of those games against the Bucs, and we saw in that second Bucs game, he didn't have Mike Evans, he didn't have Chris Godwin, and they still. Kate Otten was eaten, and Jalen McMillan and all those guys were eaten.
Yes.
And now they got add Emeka Egbuka. So we know that, behind one of the better offensive lines in football, with the weapons that they have, with no ability to get pressure on the quarterback, like
top 5 scoring team last year too. They almost averaged 30 points a game, dog.
Yeah. So like, it's one of those things where like this pass rush is going to be so critical if the Falcons want to sweep the Bucs again this year. Got to get Baker Mayfield on the ground, and again, Tristan, we wish you a healthy recovery, but take your time, dog. Take your time.
Like, I will repeat the words of my middle linebacker that we played with when we were playing against the Valdosta State Blazers, and they had Dusty Bonner, who had just transferred from Kentucky, as their quarterback, and they had this thing called soon as the play is over with, NASCAR. Oh yeah, and I never forget, man. They were in that mode. They were like NASCAR, and then I had fell down. I had thought I had got a little stinger or something, like something super simple, right? And my as soon as I was about to get up, And my middle linebacker walked past me. He said, "Man, stay your ass down." He said, "We need a blow." so I oblige. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I'm a team player, baby. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got
But
you.
yeah, man, but that's yeah. So Tristan, stay your down. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
Good.
There you go. So, guys, we got one more of these before training camp, I guess, with myself and Jarvis next week. But we got another week of positional breakdowns, and we'll get more into this defense and what this new revamped Jeff Ulbrich led defense is going to look like next week as we break down each position group ahead of training camp. So continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen by subscribing or following for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, for your second listen, check out Brad Rowland on Locked On Hawks. Hawks making big moves and see what's the latest on that front, as well as a Locked On NFL Scouting podcast. Joe Marino, Kyle Krabs talking about some of the top players around the NFL all summer long to make you the most informed fans you can possibly be, to get you geared up for this regular season. It is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.